Please don't read to me. It's probably just me, but I don't like hearing someone reading aloud from a book, whether it's their own or someone else's. Part of this is because people often don't read aloud very well, even when it's their own work. Being a good writer doesn't necessarily make you a good public speaker. For many years, I had been a fan of T.S. Eliot, but I remember borrowing one day a tape from the library. A tape, one of those thin cellulose strips wrapped around spools inside a plastic casing. Remember those? Anyway, I borrowed this from the local library, T.S. Eliot, reading some of his own poetry. Listening to him drone on in his flat, monotone voice almost destroyed poetry for me. Listening to someone read can simply be boring. Another thing that I don't like about it has something to do with the basic cognitive differences between listening to something and reading it. One of my characters in one of my books has this to say. Diane found the words on a page much easier to comprehend than the words vibrating through the air around her. On the page, the relationships between words were clear and fixed. Words in the air followed each other sequentially, and if you missed one, it was gone forever, and its successor would shrivel and die like a pruned branch. For this reason, she found that attending to a conversation required much more effort than reading a book. I hadn't realized until I started thinking about this how much I agreed with my character, Diane. It applies to reading aloud as much as it does to a conversation. When I read a book, I can see the whole sentence. I can see how the words within it relate to each other. I can see how that sentence relates to the others around it. A sentence can sometimes be quite complex, and when read out, it can be difficult to keep track of all the clauses and the subclauses. It's much easier when it's on the page in front of me. I'm also certain that there are differences in the cognitive processes that occur when hearing words compared to seeing them. I'm sure that they involve different parts of the brain. They also, I would suggest, enter the memory via different pathways. I'm willing to bet there's a much higher probability that I will have forgotten something read to me 10 minutes ago than something I read myself 10 minutes ago. For this reason, it's also much easier to lose the thread of something that's read to me than something I'm reading. And also, of course, when I'm listening to someone speak or read aloud, my attention can easily wander. I can be distracted by something, and I can't really return to that moment, at least not easily. If I do miss something when a passage from a book is read to me, what follows, as my character Diane points out, withers and dies. Once the track is lost, there's little chance of getting it back. This isn't true of the words written on the page. Finally, when I read for myself, I can do so at my own pace. I can take a moment to pause and reflect, which I often actually do. If I don't quite understand something, I can take the time to wrestle with it. None of this is possible when a piece is read to me. I'm at the mercy of the reader's pace. For these reasons, I'm always reluctant to comment on someone's writing when it's read to me. I prefer to read it for myself. And for the same reasons, I'm reluctant to read from my own work and have others comment on it. Although this is done often at writers' festivals, reading groups, and writing groups, I don't believe that books are primarily meant to be listened to. They're meant to be read. I also don't believe that it's particularly helpful, or even really possible, to judge, assess, or evaluate someone's writing on the basis of a verbal recitation, at the very least, because that recitation itself is already an interpretation.